Over my years running this channel, I've carved out something of a hole for myself looking at niche Japanese games. These games, though they often vary in quality or execution, almost never fail to be interesting to me by sheer virtue of their willingness to try something different. One series that has continued to escape me since its debut in 1994, however, is that of Umihara Kawase. Thanks to a rather spotty history of localization not actually hitting North America until 2014, it didn't hit my radar until the last couple years of the Vita's lifespan, where it seemed Sayonara Umihara Kawase was always being advertised on the PlayStation storefront. Yeah, it's not there anymore. Oh, hey kitty. Though the game piqued my curiosity then, being a steadfast physical collector, I was simply too stubborn to download it and give it an honest attempt. With the series' newest spin-off, Umihara Kawase Bazooka, getting a physical release in North America, the time has finally come to take my first look, albeit one that maybe doesn't represent the rest of the franchise very well. We are going to be looking at the Switch version of the game today, but a physical version for the PlayStation 4 will also be launching on November 20th. Standard editions of the game will be available in standard supply amounts through retail chains, but if you're looking to snag a copy and maybe want something a little more fancy or a little more rare and limited, check out the link in the description below for the Steelbook or Collector's Editions sold through Strictly Limited Games. And shout out to Strictly Limited as well for hooking me up with this early review copy. And shout out also to the special Twitter follower who name dropped me to the company and got them reaching out to me in the first place. I suck at social networking, so the help and recommendations are really appreciated. Now, I don't make any back-end cash off these links in the description or anything. These aren't affiliate links and nobody asked me to put them there. I'm just trying to be helpful to you guys and to the company that provided the game. Now, this being my first Umihara Kawase game and a spin-off at that, I didn't really know what to expect. But what I found here is something that I think fits the channel to a T. This is a niche Japanese game through and through. Granted, being a niche game, its crowd appeal isn't going to be all that wide, but there is a specific group of people I think will be really enthused by certain aspects of this game. So why don't we get into this then and answer the titular question, what is Umihara Kawase Bazooka? This game I found particularly hard to pigeonhole into a small, neat genre label. There is no story or narrative experience to speak of, so we can rule that out. But if I had to just throw a bunch of terms at it, I'd call it an arcadey action platforming wave-based fighter party game. Thanks to its mission structure being single-screen arenas with spawning enemy waves where you just fight under a time limit until you've harvested enough coins to continue to the next stage, it felt very arcadey to me, and maybe not exactly something built for long stints of gaming, more of a pick up and play kind of experience. The platforming elements are probably rather obvious just looking at the stages here. There's multiple levels, springs, conveyor belts, 3 levels of jumping abilities, those being normal, high jump, and double jump, the typical stuff. However, Umihara Kawase Bazooka does manage to mix things up a bit with its use of the series staple fishing rod. One of the fishing rod's primary uses is traversal. In a way, it's very much a Spider-Man web-slinging kind of mechanic. You can hook onto ledges and ceilings to swing around and reel yourself up, or maybe just let a conveyor belt carry you around the stage. As a wave-based fighter, well, the waves part is pretty self-explanatory. As I mentioned earlier, you need a specific amount of coins to beat a stage, and these coins need to be gained within the time limit. Whatever time is left over at the end is added to the clock in the next level. To get these coins, you need only kill the right enemies. As a fighter, there's a few interesting things at work here. First, let's look at the fishing rod again. You cast this at the enemies to stun them. The larger the enemy is, the longer they take to stun. Once stunned, you need to reel them in. And like Kirby sucking up and spitting out an enemy, you turn the enemies into a bazooka to be fired off at other enemies. If you don't fire fast enough, the enemy will break free and re-enter the battlefield. If you defeat multiple enemies with one shot, a special type of ammunition will spawn. Using this ammunition allows you to keep combo chains going and racks up your score faster. Every 50,000 points you get will net you a free life. Different types of ammunition spawn around the stage as well, but if you get too close to them, they can hurt you. These bazookas can have special effects such as exploding on impact or creating black holes. Some enemies cannot be killed by bazookas, however. For these enemies, you need to pounce off their heads, so the fishing rod will not always save the day. In addition to these standard battle mechanics, you also have 3 different special skills, which can be used at a cost to this meter down here. This meter charges up rather quickly over time, so your special skills are rather encouraged. 2 of the 3 skills don't take too much energy to cast, but the third and by far the most interesting of the skills does. Each character in the game has a different loadout of skills, but it's the character-specific third skill that I think really differentiates them all. And it really adds a little extra flair to the gameplay and gives you a good excuse to check out the whole roster. Most of the characters do end up feeling rather unique as well, and learning how to best utilize each one allows for each playthrough to feel rather fresh, which is good because this game is not long at all. There is a total of 40 stages, and every 10th stage is a boss battle. Given the nature of the game, those 40 stages don't take much longer than 2 to 3 hours to complete in their entirety. After that, each playthrough will just be doing the same thing over and over again in slightly different ways. Some days that might mean using different characters, other days it might mean playing on multiplayer with up to 4 people either online or locally, competitive or cooperatively. I will say I found myself enjoying the game much more with my wife as player 2, both competitively and cooperatively, though it definitely made co-op very easy. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot left here to look at, so I just want to blitz a couple notes before I hit my final point about the game, and why I think this will be a very special game to a small handful of people. In terms of sound, the OST, while small, was shockingly catchy. That much was evident from the first minute I booted it up. It could use more variety to at least make boss battles feel more intimidating, but the tracks on their own are pretty good.
Umihara Kawase Bazooka!
Sound effects are nothing crazy, but they work without being too distracting. The art direction, character, and creature design is very Japanese, but the stages themselves aren't all that interesting to look at, sometimes feeling like an old ROM hack of an early Sonic game. The 2D art, though, is very nice. In terms of controls, I'm a little bit conflicted. Most of the issues I had were not technical ones, I just didn't fully like every design choice. I feel like the game could be faster and control a little bit tighter and more snappy, and I really didn't like the recovery period after getting hit. I felt overall that it just lasted way too long and knocked you back way too far. You can still use your fishing pole to try and keep control during these times, but it wasn't a part of the experience I enjoyed. Otherwise, the control was fine. It took a little bit of getting used to as the game style is new to me, and I feel it's something that could take a good bit of work to master, but the button mapping makes sense and it isn't too complicated. For those that struggle, you can change your controls so things like reeling in your fishing pole are automated, but I left my controls on technical, the manual reeling mode, the entire time. Now, I'm not going to jump out here and say that this game is amazing or anything, and for as fun as it can be at times, it's really not going to be for everybody. You can probably tell by looking at the gameplay whether this is something you'll be interested in or not. But then there is that small demographic of people that I mentioned earlier. Within the niche of people that this game will appeal to, there is an even smaller niche that I think is going to get a lot out of this. Those people who were way ahead of the curve on Japanese games back in the day. Those people who in the late 80s up until the early 2000s were importing Japanese games, while the rest of us were still talking on the playground about whether or not Call of Duty was actually better than Medal of Honor. So why do I think this game appeals to them more than it does to anybody else? Well, I guess in a word, it's the fan service. So I didn't touch very much on the character roster yet because I wanted to save it for here. But this character roster is extensive and includes some rather choice fighters. Not everybody here is an original Umihara Kawase series character. A good handful were pulled from other very niche, very Japanese games. Some of you may have already noticed one while I was playing. A certain Cotton character. No, not that Cotton. Yes, that one. Personally, this was one of my favorite characters to play as, although I maybe found her skills a little overpowered. But among this roster, we also have Sonic Cat from Ring Dream, Uzuki from the horror Yuri visual novel Akai Ito, we have Ariel from Shepherd's Crossing, we even have characters from Doki Doki Puyo-Chiyo. Some of these characters are people the average player, niche or otherwise, will likely know nothing about. But for the people who have been around the scene for a long time, I think they'll get a lot of kick out of seeing them here. Some of the games these characters are from had never been localized to the West before, and though it's a hard thing to research deep enough to say this comfortably, it seems to me that this may be the Western debut for some of these characters. In a way, though this might not be a big deal to some people, I would say probably to most people, Umihara Kawase Bazooka casually created history here. And though I strongly doubt having these characters in the game will have the same effect Smash Bros having Fire Emblem characters had, wherein Fire Emblem games start getting localized shortly after due to a newfound newfound interest, this is a stepping stone for helping new people discover these older Japanese properties. For those who already knew about them through the import scene, I think this will just be a nice surprise and maybe even a bit of a cathartic experience. If there was one thing I really wish this game done though, I wish they included a little presentation on the history of the guest characters series. Something like what the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection had. But then, I am a sucker for that kind of history lesson. Stuff's just interesting to me. And by extension, in terms of its rather underground historical relevance, Umihara Kawase Bazooka is very interesting to me as well. In fact, I would say it even serves as something of a kind of poster child for the type of games I like to cover around here. But that is all I have for Umihara Kawase Bazooka, ladies and gentlemen. A niche, arcadey, Japanese party platforming wave-based fighter, or whatever I called it earlier. It comes with a hearty dose of fan service for those who have been eyeballs deep in the world of niche Japanese games for ages. Is it for everybody? No, not at all, but no niche game ever is. It's certainly not the easiest sell either, but I do firmly believe there is an audience that will really cherish this. Personally, I found it mildly fun, but I found it a lot more interesting than I did fun, which is ultimately what makes covering it such a joy for me on this channel. If you think you're part of the audience that this game appeals to, or you're just curious or have a collector's itch, check that link out below. And you know what? While you're at it, why don't you follow the developer and the publisher on their social network? They have some cool things coming out soon, like the Super Turrican pack. For me, I'm just happy to say that I finally experienced something, anything really, in this series. While not an incredible play or anything, it was a fun enough time killer, though I do still have that itch at the back of my mind telling me that I need to check out a mainline entry someday. But that day isn't today, and that video is not this video. This video is this video, and this video is over now, so if you guys like this video, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you can. Links to all my socials and my Patreon are in the description. You know what? Here, before we go, I'll give you my review from my cat. Have a good one. You like it? Hey. You like it? It's a good game? Huh? Okay.